Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Renu Tyagi from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today I am going to speak on module Importance and Implication of Pedigree and Genealogy from the paper Research Methods and Fieldwork. The learning objectives of this module are to discuss about the pedigree and genealogy and how pedigree analysis helps in understanding the inheritance of certain genetic traits, how genealogy helps in understanding one's ancestors and also in understanding the social organization between the members of a society, about the use of the genealogy in modern urban anthropology. First of all, we'll briefly talk about the introduction of the pedigree and genealogy. Family studies have been used since long back in anthropological fieldwork and research. It is considered as one of the important methods in ethnographic research. Family studies helps in understanding the relationship between the members of the family as well as the history of the family. Family studies also help in understanding the social structure and network of relationship among individuals in a society. Such study of family origin and history is known as genealogy. The word genealogy is derived from the Greek word meaning to trace ancestry. It is the science of studying the family history. In human genetics, family studies also provide genetic information of the family as well as the members of the family, which helps in tracing a particular genetic trait running in the family. Such human genetic trait can be discovered through analyzing the inheritance patterns observed from mating lines, that is through the pedigree analysis. The term pedigree comes from the two Latin words pes meaning the foot and grus meaning the crane, used to indicate the line of the descent. Pedigrees are the family trees which shows the parents and offsprings across generations as well as who possess the particular trait. In this unit, we emphasize on understanding of the pedigree analysis and methods of genealogical studies. It also focuses on the importance and the implications of the pedigree and genealogical studies. Now let's know what is pedigree. A pedigree is a diagrammatic representation showing the nature of genetic inheritance of the particular trait or traits for two or more generations of biologically related individual. In other words, it is the representation of the relationship of the family members using symbols and the line of descent. It helps in visualizing the relationship of individual in a family, particularly in a large extended families. It is often used to determine the mode of inheritance of the various genetic diseases. To understand the mode of inheritance, tracing of the family history is done through drawing the family tree using standard symbols. In the pedigrees, male and female represented by different symbols and the relationships are shown with the different pattern of the lines. Moreover, affected individuals or the carrier of a particular genetic trait are represented by the different symbols. The symbols, pattern of the line and other characteristics used in pedigree are depicted in this figure. Now let's discuss about the method of pedigree analysis and its importance in the genetic studies. Analysis of pedigree helps in understanding the nature of inheritance of a particular trait. The inheritance pattern could be autosomal recessive or dominant, or it can be X-linked recessive or dominant or Y-linked. Some of the inheritance patterns are discussed in our forthcoming section. Let's talk about the autosomal recessive inheritance using the pedigree analysis. The autosomal recessive inheritance is characterized by the presence of the homozygous recessive allele in autosomal chromosomes. Individual carrying the homozygous autosomal recessive allele shows the affected phenotype and the unaffected phenotypes are represented by the corresponding autosomal dominant allele. Such affected phenotype appears in the progeny of the unaffected parents and both male and female progenies are affected equally. To conceive a recessive homozygote individual, both the parents must have had the affected allele. The formation of an affected individual usually depends on the chance of union of the heterozygote carrier. This chance of becoming the affected increases when the mating occurs between their relatives. Mating between the relatives produce higher risk of affected homozygous recessive phenotype than do the mating between the unrelated or non-related individuals. Therefore, first cousin or close relative marriages are responsible for a larger portion of recessive diseases in the human population. This figure shows the pedigree analysis of autosomal recessive inheritance. Albinism is an example of the autosomal recessive disorder, which is caused by a defect in the enzyme that synthesizes melanin, that is the color pigment. The albinos affected individual possesses light colored hair, lack of pigmentation of the skin and pink eye pupil because of the unmasking of the red hemoglobin pigment in the blood vessel in retina. For example, albinism is determined by an allele, let's say A, and a normal condition by capital A. The affected person albinos of the disease would have small a genotype, and the unaffected individual would be either capital A or capital A small a genotype. To conceive a recessive homozygote individual, both the parents must have had the affected allele. The formation of an affected individual usually depends on the chance of union of the heterozygote carrier. This chance of becoming the affected increases when the mating occurs between the relatives. Mating between the relatives produces higher risk. Now let's talk about the inheritance of autosomal dominant inheritance. The autosomal dominant inheritance is characterized by the presence of an autosomal allele which is dominant in nature. In other words, the normal allele is recessive and the abnormal allele is dominant. In autosomal dominant inheritance, the affected individual tend to appear in every generation, since the abnormal allele carried by the affected individual has come from one of the affected parents. It means every affected individual has at least one affected parent. Only one affected parent, either mother or father, can affect all the siblings. The affected parents transmit the trait to both sons and the daughters equally. Some of the common examples of the autosomal dominant disorder in humans are achondroplasia, Huntington disease or phenylketonuria taste, etc., that is PTC taste. Now let us see a typical pedigree for a dominant disorder of PTC sensitivity in this figure. In the given pedigree, individual who can taste bitter is denoted by either capital T or capital T small t, whereas individual who could not taste the bitterness are represented by the presence of small t genotype. Now let's talk about the X-linked recessive inheritance. In X-linked recessive inheritance, the affected phenotype shows sex differentiation. Typically, more males are affected than the females. This is because a female showing the phenotype can result only from a mating in which both the mother and the father bear the allele, whereas a male with the phenotype can be produced when only the mother carries the allele. For example, if the father is normal and the mother is affected, then all the sons will be affected, while half of the daughter will be carrier of the affected trait. In case of the normal father and carrier mother, they will give birth to the son, half of whom are affected and the other half is normal. On the other hand, when the father is affected and the mother is normal, then none of the offspring are affected. All the sons will be normal, but all the daughters must be heterozygous carrier because female received one of their X chromosome from their fathers. Some of the common example of the X-linked recessive disorder in humans are hemophilia, Duchenne muscular dystrophy, that is DMD, testicular feminization syndrome, etc. Perhaps the best known example of the X-linked recessive disorder is hemophilia, which is a difficulty in which a person's blood fails to clot due to the absence of the protein called factor 8. The most famous case of the hemophilia are found in the pedigree of the royal families of Europe. This figure shows the pedigree analysis of the hemophilia, an example of X-linked recessive trait. Hemophilia is determined by an allele capital X small a and the normal condition by capital X capital A. The affected hemophilic person is represented by capital X small a and capital X small a capital Y in females and males respectively. Only one copy of the affected allele is required to express the phenotype in the males. Females who carries one copy of the affected allele, that is capital X small a, or you can say X capital A, X small a, do not show the disease phenotype. Such a person is known as the carrier of the disorder, and the normal unaffected person would have X capital A or X capital A Y genotype in the female and male respectively. Now let's discuss about the X-linked dominant inheritance. In such type of inheritance, only one affected allele is sufficient to cause the disorder. This type of disorder is equally affected in both male and female. It is a rare inheritance disorder in the human. The affected male pass the trait on to all their daughters but to none of their sons. When the affected female is married to the unaffected male, the disease trait is passed on to half of their sons and daughters. Some of the examples of the X-linked dominant disorder in humans are hydrophosphatemia, a type of vitamin D resistant rickets, Rett's syndrome or fragile X syndrome, etc. This figure gives an example of the X-linked dominant inheritance. Hypophosphatemia is determined by the presence of XD allele. Individual affected with the hypophosphatemia is represented by the X capital D, X small d, X capital D, X capital D and X capital D Y. Only one allele is sufficient to express the disease phenotype. Both male and female are equally affected. The normal genotype is represented by X small d and X small dy for female and male respectively. Now let's discuss about the Y-linked inheritance. The Y-linked inheritance is a sex-specific inheritance. Inheritance of such Y-linked genetic trait is observed only among the males because Y chromosome is found in normal male only. Such traits are not observed in the females. The Y chromosome is received from the father by all the sons only, and therefore if the father is affected, all his sons will be affected. This chromosome will not be transmitted to any of the daughter. The phenotype expression of such genetic trait is limited to the male gender only. In this figure, the inheritance of the Y-linked inheritance is shown. One of the common example of the Y-linked disorder is Y chromosome infertility is determined by the presence of I allele, that is XYI. The affected males pass the disorder to all his sons but none of his daughters. Now let's have a look at the analysis of the family pedigree, which helps in tracing out the origin of the disease phenotype that is running in the family members. It also helps in predicting the probability of certain events that might occur in the future. Pedigree analysis are used in the genetic testing of newborn babies to identify the inheritance of genetic diseases. It is also used for the testing of the heterozygote, that is carrier, as well as screening before the symptoms occurs. Pedigree of the individual families are used by the genetic counselor to help them in providing the information to families who may be at risk for the various genetic conditions. Now let's discuss about the genealogy. Genealogy is the study of one's ancestor, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents and so on. The genealogical methods was originally developed by W.H.R. Rivers during the Torres Strait expedition of 1898 to 99. It was used for the first time in his field research work on the Toda tribe. It is one of the standard procedure adopted in ethnographic research in the social anthropology. The primary aim of the genealogy is the analysis of the social organization, that is the interpersonal relationships and living arrangements between the member of a society. It is required extensive interviewing of the individual in order to record their descent, succession and inheritance. Genealogy is very much helpful in studying the kinship and thereby in understanding the social structure or network of relationship among individuals. It is achieved by collecting the demographic and social data and mapping the residence details. Therefore, genealogy is often used along with the census and observation method. It is also used in studying the pattern of migration to trace out the early migrants, discovery of the heritage, creating story of the family and even creating the medical history. Therefore, genealogy is more than just tracing a family tree. There is lot of importance of genealogical method. The genealogical method is a method used in the ethnographic studies which is based on the study of an individual's family history. It was initiated by early ethnographers to identify all important links of the kinship determined by marriage and descent. The ancestral and descendant information of one or more families are collected through interview and express the findings graphically showing the connections between the different members of the family. Genealogy commonly plays a crucial role in the structure of non-industrial societies, determining both social relations and group relations to the past. For instance, the genealogical method was used along with the censuses and settlement plans. In field research for classical monographs by various scholars on the different population groups such as Todas by Rivers, Telensi by Mayer Fortes, Tikopia by Raymond Firth, Dembu by Victor Turner, Sinhalas by Edmund Leach are among others. In genealogy, specific graphic symbols are used such as females are represented by the circle symbol whereas males are represented by the triangle symbol. The triangle and circles are connected by the different types of lines showing the relationship that binds the subject. The deployment of these lines relationship is known as the genealogical tree, whether descent or descent to the subject on which it is building the set of relationship. Number of the generations are written on the left side of each corresponding generation with the Roman numeral. Each of the individual in the genealogy is numbered by an Arabic numeral. The numbering of the individual in genealogy is very useful as it helps in identifying a particular person very easily. This slide shows the symbol used in the genealogical studies. Now let's see the use and importance of the genealogical method. Genealogical method is used as a tool for the data collection, representation and analysis of various social processes of a population. The genealogical method helps to determine the family history, historical events, family inheritance, family tradition, culture and tracing of the land ownership. It also helps in reconnecting the members of related families. It also helps in finding the true family history from the records. Generally, it is used during the fieldwork to collect and organize the data for different applications. The primary purpose of the genealogy is to improve the analysis for better understanding of the interpersonal relation and social organization. The genealogical method required extensive interviewing in order to collect the vital statistics of a population and to record the information relating primarily to the descent, succession and inheritance. In anthropological research work, the genealogical method is used in combination with the ego-centered network. Set of symbols are used to draw the kinship or genealogical chart to express the relationship diagrammatically, how any two persons are related by the bonds of the kinship. Such kinship relationships are traced from a reference individual who is known as the ego. The importance of the genealogical method extends beyond the specialized realm of kinship studies. It also provides the foundation of the structural demography of the studied population, highlighting the relationship between the functioning and durability of the social structure and the actual size of the population. The genealogical method helps in assessing the risk of getting certain medical conditions that tend to run in the families. Moreover, it further helps in determining the risk and effect of inheritance at individual level too. It also provides the clue to any prominent illness and unusual causes of the death from the collected death record of the population. With advanced technology nowadays, the deoxyribose nucleic acid, that is DNA, uniquely different from each individual, is used as a source of genealogical information. The non-coding DNA sequence help in determining whether and how closely related individuals to each other. These non-coding DNA strands remain unchanged from generation to generation, and if any changes in such sequence helps in distinguishing the different line of the descent and determine how closely people may be related to each other from the closeness of their DNA matches. Now let's summarize what we have learned so far from this module. We have learned that pedigree is a diagrammatic representation showing the inheritance pattern of a particular trait or traits. Pedigree analysis of men is done through analyzing the results of mating that have already occurred. The nature of the inheritance of the autosomal recessive disorder, autosomal dominant disorder, X-linked recessive disorder, X-linked dominant disorder in men are commonly analyzed through the pedigree analysis. An autosomal recessive disorder means two copies of an abnormal gene must be present in order for the disease or trait to develop. However, in the autosomal dominant disorder, presence of only one abnormal gene develops the disease, and the disease phenotype tends to appear in every generation of the pedigree. The X-linked recessive disorders are more frequently observed among males than females due to the presence of only one X chromosome. On the other hand, the X-linked dominant disorder require only one copy of the allele to cause the disorder. Therefore, both the male and female are equally affected when they inherited from their parents who has the disorder. Genealogy, also known as the family history, is the study of families and tracing their lineages and the history. This method uses oral interviews, historical records, genetic analysis and other record to obtain the information about a family and to demonstrate the kinship relationship of its member. The result of the genealogical studies are often displayed in the charts or written as narratives. It is useful in different fields of these studies such as anthropological fieldwork, kinship relationship, tracing the missing link or members of a family, and assessment of the risk getting certain disease in the family members. The DNA strands are also used in determining whether and how closely individuals are related to other individuals based on the closeness of their DNA matches. Thank you.